Welcome back to Echoes of Ihsan Podcast, where we take a deep dive into those source materials you send our way.
Yeah, we try to get to the heart of it.
Exactly. And today we're diving deep into Sahih Bukhari, Book 34, Sales and Trade.
Oh, interesting.
This is a collection of hadiths that one of our listeners sent our way. And I have to admit,
Okay.
when I first saw the title, I thought, oh, this is going to be a bit dry.
Uh-huh.
But let me tell you, I was so wrong.
Really?
I was so wrong. It is fascinating.
Yeah, I can see how that would be. I mean,
Yeah.
sales and trade, you think like contracts and all this kind of stuff, but
Yeah, just very like transactional, but it's not.
it gets much deeper than that.
It's not. And it's fascinating. It's a window into ethical and social and even spiritual dimensions of economic activity in early Muslim society.
It's a blueprint for good living,
Yeah.
even in the marketplace.
Exactly. And the thing that really grabbed me was how these teachings are woven into these really compelling narratives.
It's not just rules.
No.
It's story.
It's storytelling at its finest.
Right. Like you take, for example, Hadith 263.
Right.
That tells a story of Abu Huraira,
Uh-huh.
who was one of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Right.
And he's talking about how other companions would be in the marketplace, wheeling and dealing and doing their thing.
Right.
But he was content with just enough to sustain himself
Here.
so that he could be present with the Prophet to learn and memorize his teachings.
Wow, that's dedication.
Yeah, he compares himself to a camel laden with knowledge.
That's a lot of knowledge,
Oh, yeah.
especially back then when you had to memorize everything.
Oh, absolutely.
There was no,
Or just Google it.
there's no writing it down. There was no, recording it.
Yeah, it was all oral tradition.
Oh,
So these people had phenomenal memories.
That's amazing.
It is, yeah.
He wasn't just passively listening either.
Hmm.
He was actively engaged in preserving and transmitting these valuable teachings.
Absolutely.
And it really speaks to the importance placed on knowledge and its accurate transmission within the Islamic tradition.
Yes, absolutely. And that dedication to preserving knowledge is what ultimately led to the compilation of the Hadith collections,
Right.
including Sahih Bukhari.
Oh.
So, in a way, Abu Huraira's commitment resonates with what we're doing here on Echoes of Ihsan,
Yeah.
taking deep dives into knowledge.
I love that connection.
Yeah.
And speaking of immersive stories, we can't forget the tale of Abdurrahman bin Auf,
Oh, yes.
another companion who migrated to Medina.
Hadiths 264 and 265 paint such a vivid picture of his arrival.
Yeah.
He comes to Medina as a migrant with practically nothing.
Yeah.
And the Prophet, peace be upon him, pairs him with a local Ansar and encourages him to participate in the marketplace.
And it's not just about business, right?
No, not at all.
Like,
Yeah.
Abdurrahman finds success in the marketplace very quickly. And I
Yeah.
think he comes back the same day with traces of perfume on him and announces that he got married.
Got married, yeah.
And the Prophet, peace be upon him, learns that he only paid like a really small amount as a dowry, and he advised him to host a wedding banquet,
Yeah, even if it's just with one sheep.
even if it's just with a sheep,
Yeah,
which I just think is beautiful.
it is. Yeah.
Like such a
It's very heartwarming.
heartwarming story.
Yeah.
It touches on so many themes, economic empowerment and community support and
Yeah, celebrating life's milestones.
yeah,
Even in the simplest of ways.
and just the practicality of it too.
Yeah,
Like, here's what you should do.
yeah,
Go have a party.
exactly.
It shows how the Prophet, peace be upon him, really offered this practical guidance
Yeah, very down to earth.
that addressed both the material and social needs of his companions.
He wasn't just this, figurehead. He
Uh-huh.
was really involved in their lives.
Yeah, it's a reminder that success isn't just about financial gain.
Right.
It's about building a life that's rich in relationships, generosity, and meaningful connections.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, enough with the heartwarming stories.
Okay, yeah.
Let's get down to the nitty-gritty
Right.
of marketplace practices.
Let's do it.
What can we learn about the actual marketplace itself from Book 34?
Well, the hadiths make it clear that marketplaces were bustling hubs of activity even before Islam.
Oh.
So Hadith 266,
Uh,
it specifically mentions Ukins, Majana, and Dulmajaz as pre-Islamic marketplaces,
right.
where Arabs would gather for trade and poetry competitions.
Poetry competition.
Yeah, they would
Rats.
love their poetry.
That's cool. So it was
Riddles.
a place to be.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Every time.
I didn't realize that marketplaces were a thing before Islam.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So was there any,
Yeah.
uncertainty about whether it was okay for Muslims to continue trading in these like pre-Islamic marketplaces.
Yeah, I mean, that's natural, right?
Yeah.
When a new way of life comes in,
Yeah.
you kind of question what's still okay and
Right.
what's not. But the Quran addresses this concern in verse 2.198, which clarifies that there's no harm in seeking sustenance during Hajj.
During Hajj.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is the annual pilgrimage to Mecca.
Okay.
So this verse, along with the Hadiths, highlights how Islam aimed to regulate and reform existing practices.
So not abolish them.
Right.
Right.
Bring them in line
Yeah.
with Islamic values.
Gotcha. It's about bringing ethical principles into the existing framework.
Exactly.
So it's not about shutting down trade,
No.
but ensuring that it's conducted ethically and in line with Islamic values.
Right.
And that brings us to the concept of halal and haram,
Oh, yeah.
which is lawful and unlawful.
Very important concepts.
Yes, these terms are central to understanding how Islamic teachings guide behavior.
Right.
And not just in the marketplace, but in all aspects of life.
In all aspects.
I think what's really interesting here is how the Hadiths provide specific examples of what falls under these categories.
Right, because it can be a little abstract sometimes.
Right.
You know, what's halal, what's haram. But the Hadith give us concrete examples.
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
take Hadith 299.
Okay.
It explicitly prohibits accepting payment for certain actions, including cupping.
Cupping, yeah.
Now, for someone who might not be familiar with cupping,
Yeah, not everyone's had it done.
it's an ancient medical practice,
Mm.
and it involves placing these heated cups on the skin to create suction.
Yeah.
And it was believed to have various medicinal benefits.
It's still practiced today.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, you see those marks on people's backs sometimes.
Oh.
Those circular marks.
Yeah.
That's from cupping.
Oh, wow. I always wondered what those were.
Yeah, it's making a comeback.
Huh. So what's fascinating about this hadith is that it raises questions about the reasoning behind this prohibition.
It does.
Was
Yeah.
it about the nature of the practice itself? Were there concerns about potential exploitation or the commodification of healing? Like, why?
Yeah, why is it that you can't get paid for this particular service?
Right.
And scholars have debated this. Okay.
But it underscores how Islamic teachings encourage us to think critically about the ethics of our actions
Yeah.
and even our professions.
And our professions, yeah. It's not just about blind adherence to rules,
Right.
but about understanding the deeper principles and values that inform those rules.
Exactly.
And I think this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Because it encourages us to apply these principles to our own lives and choices
In the modern day, yeah.
that we make today.
Absolutely.
So we're not just looking at,
yeah.
centuries-old practices.
It's not just a history lesson.
Yeah.
Right.
But we can use this as a framework.
It's applicable
Yeah.
to today.
Exactly.
To our lives.
Exactly.
Welcome back to Echoes of Ihsan. Before we dig into more specific examples from the Hadith, I think it's worth pausing to reflect on something we touched on earlier. That emphasis on compassion,
Oh, yeah.
especially in financial dealings,
Right, right.
that's a theme that runs throughout Book 34. It's not just about avoiding unethical practices.
Right.
It's about actively cultivating compassion and understanding,
Yes.
especially when it comes to money matters.
Especially
Yeah, it's almost like there's this awareness that financial hardship can make people vulnerable, and that calls for a heightened sense of responsibility.
Absolutely. And we see this reflected in several hadiths.
Okay.
Hadiths 290, 291, and 292.
Okay.
All provide examples of how this compassion can manifest in practice.
Hadith 291 particularly stands out for me.
Oh, interesting. Tell me about it.
It tells the story of a man who was known for giving his debtors ample time to repay,
Okay.
especially if they were struggling.
Yeah.
And what's amazing is that even after his death, angels interceded on his behalf because of his kindness and leniency.
It's like his good deeds
Yeah.
continued to benefit him.
It's a powerful illustration of how our actions, have this lasting impact.
Yeah.
It's not just about the immediate transaction,
Right.
It's about recognizing the humanity of those we're dealing with.
Yeah, that human connection.
Yeah, understanding their circumstances
Right.
and extending grace when needed.
It really humanizes the whole process.
It does.
Business and finance.
It really challenges that stereotype of the ruthless businessman, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Like it suggests that true success isn't just about maximizing profit.
Right.
It's about building relationships based on fairness and mutual respect.
Exactly.
And this sense of compassion.
Yeah.
It isn't limited to just individual transactions.
Yeah.
It extends to broader societal structures and systems.
It's a worldview.
It is. It's interesting. This hadith makes me think about modern-day discussions around things like debt relief
Yeah.
and predatory lending practices.
Mhm.
Like, these concerns aren't new, are they?
They've been grappled with for centuries.
Yeah.
These ethical dilemmas have been pondered and addressed within Islamic teachings for a long time.
There's another hadith, number 292, where a merchant is forgiven by God for his own debts
Wow.
because he instructed his employees to be lenient towards those who owed him money and were experiencing financial hardship.
So he benefited from his own compassion, basically.
It's incredible. It highlights the ripple effect of our actions, doesn't
It
it?
does, yeah.
That one act of compassion from the merchant extended outwards, impacting not only his immediate debtors, but also himself.
Right.
It suggests that acts of grace can generate a kind of positive energy.
Yeah, like karma.
Yeah.
You put good out there, you get good back.
It benefits everyone involved.
Right.
And this focus on compassion in financial dealings,
Yeah.
it's not limited to business transactions.
It goes beyond that.
It even extends to family
Your
dynamics.
family, right.
Hadith 413 is a fascinating example of this.
Okay.
It addresses the situation of a woman whose husband is extremely miserly.
Oh, wow.
She seeks advice from the Prophet, peace be upon him, because her husband's stinginess is creating hardship for her and their children.
That's a tough situation.
It is.
Yeah.
And the Prophet, peace be upon him, advises her that she is allowed to take what is reasonably needed for herself and her children from her husband's wealth without his knowledge.
So it's recognizing the needs
Yeah.
of the family.
And it challenges that traditional notion of the husband having absolute control over finances within the family, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
It highlights the importance of balance
Mm-hmm.
and fairness within the family structure.
And practicality, too.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do.
It recognizes that all members of the family have needs that must be met,
Right.
and that sometimes conventional norms need to be challenged to ensure justice and well-being.
Yeah, sometimes the rules need to be bent a little bit for the
Right.
sake of fairness.
It's almost like a safety net,
Yeah, it is.
protecting the vulnerable members of the family from financial abuse or neglect.
It's about protecting the vulnerable.
It's a reminder that ethical considerations extend to all our relationships,
Yes, absolutely.
even those closest to us.
Even the ones closest to us.
It's about ensuring everyone's basic needs are met and that resources are distributed equitably.
Fairness, yeah.
So we've talked about ethical principles,
Yeah.
compassion,
Mm-hmm.
but Book 34 doesn't shy away from getting into the specifics, does it?
No, it gets into the nitty-gritty.
There are a lot of detailed guidelines for particular trade practices.
Yeah, practical advice.
And some of them might seem a bit quirky or even outdated to a modern audience.
Well, yeah, times have changed.
But if you look closely,
Mm-hmm.
they reveal a deep concern for fairness, transparency, and preventing any form of exploitation.
It's about the principles behind the rules.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like each of these guidelines is addressing a specific scenario
Mm-hmm.
that could potentially lead to injustice or harm.
Trying to prevent problems
Right.
before they arise.
Take, for example, the prohibition of riba,
Okay.
which we touched on earlier.
Yeah, usury.
Hadith 298 explicitly forbids the charging of excessive interest on loans, which was a common practice in pre-Islamic Arabia.
It was, yeah.
It's fascinating because even today, the debate about interest and its ethical implications continues.
It's still a hot topic.
It is. There are many who argue that excessive interest rates can create a cycle of debt
Mm-hmm.
that traps people in poverty.
So these concerns are still relevant today?
Very much so.
Yeah.
And then there are the guidelines on selling foodstuff.
Okay.
Hadith 334, for instance,
Yeah.
prohibits reselling food in the same place it was bought.
Interesting.
It encourages traders to take it to the marketplace where it can be properly assessed and sold fairly.
So it's about preventing like a monopoly situation.
Yeah, like ensuring a level playing field.
Yeah.
It prevents price manipulation
Right.
or someone taking advantage of uninformed buyers who might not be aware of the true value of the goods.
It's about protecting consumer
Yeah.
as well as promoting fair trade.
And Hadith 336 instructs buyers of foodstuff not to sell it before they've fully received and measured it.
Okay.
It's emphasizing transparency
Mm-hmm.
and accuracy in transactions.
You've got to know what you're selling.
You need to be sure you've actually received what you paid for
Right.
before you turn around and sell it to someone else.
It's about accountability
Yes.
and preventing disputes.
It's interesting how these hadiths address specific practices
Yeah.
that could potentially lead to conflict or unethical behavior
It's like they're anticipating problems
Yeah.
and offering solutions.
to ensure fairness and harmony in the marketplace.
It's a proactive approach
It is.
to ethics.
That's a great observation.
Thanks.
And then there are practices like Nash,
Dash.
which involves artificially inflating prices by pretending there are other bidders or creating a false sense of demand.
Like creating hyped
Yeah.
artificially.
Hadith 352 specifically prohibits this practice.
So that's not cool.
I like those tactics you sometimes see in online auctions today where people create fake bids.
Yeah, to drive up the price,
Yeah.
trying to trick people.
It's amazing how these age-old concerns about market manipulation are still relevant
They are.
in our modern, technologically driven world.
Human nature doesn't really change.
No, it doesn't.
Right.
It speaks to the timeless nature of these ethical principles.
Yeah.
The forms of trade and commerce may evolve.
But the values remain the same.
Yeah, but the underlying values of honesty, fairness, and transparency,
Those are constants.
they remain essential.
Yeah.
Even the seemingly obscure guidelines,
Like what? Give me an example.
like the one about selling unripe fruits.
Oh, yeah.
Hadith 399 prohibits the sale of dates until they've reached a certain stage of ripeness.
So you can't just sell anything.
They all point to this underlying concern for preventing harm and ensuring quality.
It's about being honest.
Imagine trying to explain that one to someone today.
I know, right?
Like, sorry, you can't buy those bananas yet.
They're not ethically ripe.
Yeah,
It would sound strange,
it would.
but there's wisdom there.
There is. It seems so specific. But it speaks to the larger principle of not taking advantage of someone's ignorance or desperation.
Right.
It's about promoting a culture of fairness,
Yes.
even in the smallest of transactions.
It's about the little things adding up
Exactly.
to create a more ethical society.
So we've seen how these hadiths provide practical guidelines for specific trade practices.
Yeah, we've gotten into the weeds a little bit.
But there's another layer here that we need to explore.
Okay, what's that?
Book 34 doesn't just focus on the technical aspects of trade.
Right.
It also invites us to consider the broader social and spiritual dimensions of our interactions in the marketplace.
It's about more than just making money.
This is where things get really interesting for me.
Okay, why is that?
We're not just talking about economic transactions. We're delving into the heart of human relationships and the impact we have on one another.
It's about our interconnectedness.
It is.
Right.
It's about recognizing that the marketplace isn't just a place for buying and selling.
Right.
It's a microcosm of society. It is, yeah.
A space where our values and character are put to the test.
It's a reflection of who we are.
There's this one hadith that beautifully captures this idea.
Oh.
Hadith 314.
Okay.
It compares a good companion to a musk seller
Interesting.
and a bad companion to a blacksmith's bellows.
Okay, so one is pleasant
Yes.
and one is not.
It's so vivid.
Yeah.
One leaves you with a pleasant, lingering fragrance,
Right.
while the other might scorch you or leave you smelling of smoke.
It's a great analogy.
It's a powerful way to illustrate the impact we have on those around us.
The kind of energy we bring to our interactions,
Yes.
it matters.
It's a reminder that our interactions have consequences,
Yes.
not just for ourselves, but for others.
We have a responsibility
We do.
to be mindful of that.
We can choose to be a source of positivity,
Right.
to uplift and inspire those we encounter.
To be the musk seller,
Yes.
not the bellows.
Or we can bring negativity and harm.
And that's a choice we make
We do.
every day. And this message, it transcends the marketplace.
Yeah, it goes beyond that,
It applies to all our relationships,
to all of them.
whether it's with family, friends, colleagues,
Strangers.
even strangers.
Yeah.
We encounter.
Every interaction matters.
Every interaction is an opportunity to make a positive impact.
To spread that fragrance
Yes.
of goodness.
It's like the butterfly effect,
Yeah,
but for human interaction.
I like that.
Even a seemingly insignificant transaction can have ripple effects that extend far beyond the immediate moment.
It's a chain reaction.
It
It's
is.
a kindness.
Our choices, our words, our dealings.
They all matter.
They all shape the world around us,
Yeah.
creating a ripple effect of positivity or negativity.
It's a powerful thought.
It is. This deep dive is really making me think about the way I interact with people.
Me too.
Not just in the marketplace, but in all aspects of my life.
It's a good reminder
It is.
to be our best selves.
Yeah.
In every situation.
Absolutely. Welcome back to Echoes of Ihsan. We've spent this whole deep dive exploring Sahih Bukhari, Book 34, Sales and Trade. Really fascinating stuff.
It's been a journey for sure, unpacking these hadiths and seeing how they provide these guidelines for business, but also like a whole ethical framework for living.
Yeah, exactly. And what's really striking to me is how these teachings from centuries ago
Mm.
still resonate with our modern concerns today.
It's like they knew what they were talking about back then.
They did. We've talked about honesty and compassion and fairness,
Timeless values.
timeless values that are just as relevant today as they were back then.
For sure. So, as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I was wondering if we could distill some key takeaways for our listeners. What are some things they can take away from this?
I think that's a great idea. What are some nuggets of wisdom from this exploration?
Well, for me, one of the most powerful takeaways is that unwavering emphasis on honesty and transparency
Yeah,
in all transactions.
right.
The hadiths just repeatedly stress that concealing information or manipulating prices or engaging in any kind of deception
Yeah.
ultimately erodes trust and harms everyone involved.
It's like building a house on a shaky foundation,
Exactly.
right? Without that honesty and transparency,
Hmm.
any business deal, any economic system, it's bound to crumble.
It's not sustainable.
It's not. It's about recognizing that our financial dealings aren't just these cold, hard transactions.
Right.
They're opportunities to build relationships
Yeah, based on integrity.
based on integrity and mutual respect.
Yeah, and that leads to another key takeaway, the importance of compassion,
Oh, yeah.
especially when dealing with those who are struggling or facing hardship.
Right. We saw so many examples of that.
We did, yeah.
The man who gave his debtors ample time to repay.
The merchant who instructed his employees to be lenient.
Mm.
Even the prophet's advice to the woman dealing with a miserly husband.
So many examples.
It's like this book is reminding us that ethical behavior is not just about avoiding wrongdoing.
Right.
It's about actively seeking ways to help others.
Right. To be kind and considerate, even in our financial dealings.
Exactly. It's about understanding that our actions have ripple effects.
Yeah.
When we choose compassion, when we extend a helping hand, we create a positive impact that extends far beyond ourselves.
And it's not just about abstract principles either.
Right.
Like Book 34 gives us these very specific guidelines.
Yeah, it gets into the nitty-gritty.
For various trade practices, we
Right.
talked about the prohibition of riba,
Right.
the guidelines for selling foodstuff, the importance of accuracy in measurements,
Mm-hmm.
even that seemingly strange rule about selling unripe fruits.
Right, like how specific can you get?
But, they all point to that same underlying principle.
That desire for fairness.
Ensuring fairness, preventing harm, promoting a culture of ethical conduct in the marketplace.
It's about thinking ahead, anticipating potential pitfalls,
Yeah.
addressing them proactively, creating systems that protect the vulnerable, and ensure that everyone has a fair chance.
And for me, one of the most memorable takeaways is that beautiful analogy of the musk seller and the blacksmith's bellows.
Oh, yeah, that one's a classic.
It's such a simple but profound image.
Is.
It encapsulates the impact we have on those around us.
Right. Do we want to leave people feeling good? Or do we want to leave them feeling scorched?
It's a reminder that our interactions, even the seemingly insignificant ones, can leave a lasting impression.
Absolutely. Every interaction matters.
We can choose to be a source of positivity, uplift, and inspire those we encounter.
Be the musk seller. Spread that good fragrance.
Or we can spread negativity and harm.
It's our choice.
It is so much to think about.
There is.
How can our listeners apply these principles from Book 34 to their own experiences?
I think a good starting point is to simply become more aware of our financial dealings.
Okay.
Are we conducting them with honesty, integrity, and compassion,
Yeah, are we considering the impact of our choices?
both on ourselves and on those we interact with?
Yeah, are we treating others with the same fairness and respect that we would want for ourselves?
Exactly. And are we seeking to create a more just and equitable world through our business practices and our financial decisions?
These are big questions.
They are, but they're important ones.
And there are no simple answers, but I think engaging with these questions
No, wrestling with them.
is a crucial step towards living a more ethical and fulfilling life.
It's a journey, not a destination.
This deep dive into Sahih Bukhari Book 34 has been truly enlightening.
It's been a pleasure exploring it with you.
It's a reminder that even the seemingly mundane aspects of life can be infused with meaning and purpose,
When approached with the right mindset.
when approached with awareness and intention.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Islamic ethics and commerce.
It's been a fascinating journey.
We hope it sparked your curiosity and challenged your assumptions and left you with some valuable insights.
We hope you learned something.
We encourage you to continue exploring these topics.
Yeah, keep the conversation going.
Whether it's delving into other hadiths or engaging in conversations with friends and family, or simply reflecting on your own experiences.
It's all about growth.
Thank you for listening to Echoes of Ihsan. Until next time, may your interactions be filled with wisdom, compassion, and that lingering scent of musk.